This war did not become a global oil crisis because dozens of supertankers were sent to the bottom of the sea. It became a global oil crisis because Iran proved something even more dangerous. It could turn the Strait of Hormuz into a selective kill zone for commercial shipping. By the conservative official count, the confirmed incident ledger already shows a chain of attacks and damage across tankers, cargo ships, container vessels, offshore craft, and support vessels. In the broader UCAMTO picture, 20 incidents were reported by March 12th, including 16 attacks. That is the real story, not one cinematic sinking. A rolling campaign of fear that made every ship owner, insurer, refiner, and government ask the same question: who is next? The timeline starts on February 28, 2026, when the US-Israeli war on Iran began. Within days, the Strait of Hormuz was no longer just a choke point on a map. It was the pressure valve of the world economy. On March 2nd, Iranian messaging became unmistakable. The strait was treated as closed, and ships trying to pass were threatened with attack. U.S. maritime authorities then warned that Iran continued to threaten and conduct strikes on commercial vessels in the Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz, and the Gulf of Oman. This is the moment the crisis stopped being theoretical. Hormuz was no longer a shipping route under tension. It was a shipping route under fire. And then came March 1st, the first day that made the whole industry understand this was real. Stena Imperative was hit in Bahrain, killing a shipyard worker and seriously injuring 2 more. Hercules Star caught fire northwest of Mina Sakhr. MKD Viam was struck off Oman, killing 1 seafarer. Skylight was hit north of Kasab, leaving 4 injured, 1 dead, and 1 missing. That is how the campaign opened, not with a symbolic warning shot, but with multiple vessels hit across the Gulf theater in a single day. The message was immediate and brutal. Iran, or Iran-linked forces in this campaign, did not need to stop every ship. They only needed to prove that any ship could be hit. The next wave made the pattern impossible to dismiss as isolated incidents. On March 3rd, Gold Oak and Libra Trader were damaged east of Fujairah. On March 4th, Safine Prestige suffered hull damage north of Oman. On March 5th, Sonangol Namibe suffered a hull breach. On March 6th, Musafa 2 was hit in an attack that killed 4 seafarers and severely injured 3 more. On March 7th, Arabia Thatray was struck in Saudi waters, injuring a seafarer. This is why the phrase shipping disruption sounds too soft for what happened. The ledger reads less like a transport problem and more like a running target list. Different hulls, different flags, different cargoes, same message. Nobody in the corridor was safe. Then the crisis accelerated again on March 11th and March 12th. Safe Sea Vishnu was hit near Khor al-Zubair, causing a fire and killing 1 seafarer. Zephyros suffered collateral fire damage from the same attack zone. Star Gwyneth took damage to its cargo holds and forecastle. Mayuri Nari caught fire, with 3 seafarers unaccounted for. 1 Majesty suffered hull damage. The next day, Source Blessing was damaged north of Jebel Ali. On March 16th, Gas al-Ahmadiyya was struck east of Fujairah. This is the stretch where Hormuz stopped looking like a threatened choke point and started looking like a maritime battlefield. Not one ship, not one day, a cascade, a tempo, a rhythm of hits close enough together to freeze confidence across the market. So what is the clearest, most defensible ship count for your audience? Here it is. In the 17 named confirmed incidents on the IMO list through March 17, the breakdown is 9 tanker or gas tanker cases. Stena Imperative, Hercules Star, MKD Viam, Skylight, Libra Trader, Sonangol Namibe, Safe Sea Vishnu, Zephyros, and Gas al-Ahmadiyya, and 6 cargo ship cases, Gold Oak, Safine Prestige, Mayuri Nari, Star Gwyneth, 1 Majesty, and Source Blessing, plus 2 support or offshore cases, Musafa 2 and Arabia 3. That count is strong because it comes from matching the IMO incident record with public ship registries. But there is one more crucial caveat. Not every one of these was publicly identified as a missile strike. Some were projectile strikes. Some were blasts. Some were fires after impact. Some were collateral damage. So the strongest phrasing is not Iran missile hit 17 ships. It is this. Iran's campaign hit or damaged at least 17 named vessels in the confirmed ledger, including 9 tankers or LPG tankers and 6 cargo vessels. And this is where the story gets bigger than ships. Hormuz is not just another sea lane. According to the IEA, around 20 million barrels per day of crude and oil products moved through the strait in 2025, about 25% of the world's seaborne oil trade. By March 11th, the IEA said export volumes of crude and refined products through Hormuz had fallen to less than 10% of pre-conflict levels, calling the disruption the largest in the history of the global oil market and triggering the biggest collective oil stock stock release the agency has ever organized, 400 million barrels. That is why a few burning hulls mattered so much. Every attack in Hormuz was not just a strike on a vessel. It was a strike on throughput, insurance, freight, refining schedules, inflation, and fuel politics on multiple continents. The market reaction tells the same story. Brent crude climbed to $112.19 a barrel on March 20th, while the UN's trade arm warned that oil tanker freight costs were surging toward historic highs, with the Baltic Dirty Tanker Index up 54% and the Clean Tanker Index up 72% between February 27 and March 6. Insurance was hit just as hard. Shipping market reporting says war risk premiums that were once around 0.25% of a ship's value have in some cases blown out to 7.5% or even more for high-risk voyages. So when people ask why this matters outside the Gulf, the answer is simple. Because the cost of fear in Hormuz gets passed into every gallon, every diesel bill, every freight invoice, and every central bank inflation headache. But Iran's strategy was not pure closure. It was selective control. By March 13th, Reuters reporting said Iran had allowed 2 Indian LPG tankers through as a rare exception. By March 15th, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi was saying the strait was open to the world except ships linked to the United States and Israel. And by mid-March, Lloyd's List intelligence data showed that at least 89 ships, including 16 oil tankers, crossed Hormuz between March 1 and 15. That sounds like movement, but compare it with the pre-war norm of roughly 100 to 135 vessel movements a day. The point is not that normal traffic returned. It did not. The point is that Iran shifted from trying to prove it could shut Hormuz to proving it could decide who was allowed to use it. That is a far more sophisticated form of leverage. That shift is exactly why outside powers started moving. Britain, France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, and Japan issued a joint statement on March 19th saying they were ready to contribute to efforts to ensure safe passage through Hormuz. Earlier, the British Prime Minister had already coordinated with Germany and Italy on the importance of freedom of navigation and defensive measures in the region. President Trump said he had pressed about 7 countries to join a coalition to police the waterway, and on March 19th, the IMO Council formally condemned the attacks and called for an internationally coordinated safe passage framework. In other words, by the 3rd week of March, Hormuz was no longer just a naval security issue. It had become an allied burden-sharing crisis and a test of whether the world's trading powers were willing to defend the artery they all depend on. So the sharpest conclusion for your video is this. Iran did not need to sink a parade of supertankers to shake the world. It needed to hit enough ships, in enough categories, over enough consecutive days, to destroy the assumption of safe passage. That is what happened in Hormuz between February 28 and March 24. A tanker burned here. A bulker was ripped open there. A container ship took hull damage. A crew died. Another crew disappeared. Traffic collapsed. Oil spiked. Freight surged. Insurance exploded. Government scrambled. And suddenly, the most important energy choke point on Earth was not a line on the map anymore. It was the front line of the war.